Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today's Atlantic Council Europe Center event on the future of U.S. leadership in the Western Balkans. My name is Jeanne Shaheen. I'm the Senior Director of the Europe Center at the Atlantic Council, and it's wonderful to see so many friends and partners here as we mark an important moment for the Western Balkans and for U.S. engagement in the region. We're especially honored to welcome Senator Jeanne Shaheen and Congressman Mike Turner, two of the most active voices on the Western Balkans in the United States Congress. It's an honor to have you both with us and to co-host this event here on Capitol Hill, Senator, Congressman. This conversation comes just 2 days after the 30th anniversary of the Dayton Peace Agreement, an agreement that not only stopped a devastating war, but also bolstered Bosnia and Herzegovina's sovereignty and helped set the country on a path towards Euro-Atlantic integration. 30 years later, both Bosnia and the wider region face a new and complex set of challenges. Threats to Bosnia's constitutional order, economic stagnation and brain drain, lackluster political and economic reforms in parts of the wider Western Balkans, and threats of malign influences from abroad seeking to destabilize progress in the region. At the same time, it's a moment that offers meaningful opportunities to move the region forward. There's a growing recognition, both in Washington and across the region, that sustained U.S. leadership remains critical to unlocking a more stable and prosperous future, not only for Bosnia, but for the region as a whole as well. Senator Shaheen and Representative Turner have been central to that U.S. leadership in Congress. Their recent bipartisan resolutions commemorating the anniversary of Dayton reaffirmed the United States' enduring support for Bosnia's sovereignty, its democratic development, and its Euro-Atlantic path. And there's, of course, Senator Shaheen's Western Balkans Democracy and Prosperity Act attached to the NDAA, awaiting final passage in the Senate. As we look ahead, that kind of bipartisan commitment from Washington, along with European partners and allies, will impact to no small part what the next 30 years will look like for Bosnia and the Western Balkans. Before I turn it over to our panel, which will be moderated by Ilva Tare, resident senior fellow at the Europe Center, I should note that this event is part of the Europe Center's Balkans Forward initiative. Through discussions and our analysis, our programming focused on the Western Balkans, our Balkans Forward initiative aims to promote U.S. leadership and engagement in the region and advance a forward-looking agenda for peace, stability, cooperation, and economic opportunity in the region. With that, I will turn it over to Ilva for a panel with Senator Shaheen and Congressman Turner. Over to you, Ilva.
Thank you so much, Jorn. Thank you to Senator Shaheen and Congressman Turner. I'm really honored to moderate this conversation and to thank you for unwavering leadership for the Western Balkans here in Congress. But let's start with our moment, which is both a reflection of the Dayton Accords 30 years ago, but also of urgency of addressing the challenges that the country is facing right now. 30 years after Dayton, Bosnia is confronting, as Jorn mentioned, stagnation, ethnic captures, and an erosion of peace. You have been a frequent visitor in Sarajevo, and you have deep knowledge of the country. I want to ask you if you believe that Dayton constitutional framework can still support a multi-ethnic, democratic, European future for Bosnia and Herzegovina. Senator Shaheen, with you first.
I think one of the challenges for me over the years has been to worry that what the Dayton Accords did was a great job of ending the war, but that it has put in place this multi-ethnic requirement, the tripartite presidency, that makes it hard to get agreement across the various groups in ways that I think most of us, looking at what happened at the end of the war and the beginning of the Dayton Accords, was that Bosnia-Herzegovina would move beyond that structure and create its own structure. And that's been really hard to do. And I think the fact that we've sort of enshrined this process as the Accords did may have contributed to that. And how we move beyond that, I think, is the real question at this point.
I served as mayor for the city of Dayton during the Dayton Peace Accord negotiations at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. And I recently was in Sarajevo just before Thanksgiving, where the city of Sarajevo symbolically granted to Senator Shaheen and myself citizenship of the city of Sarajevo, to the recognition of the years in which we have championed the issue of building democratic institutions and championed the Balkans. And
So, did you get a key? Are we going to get a key? I haven't visited to accept this honor. So,
we had a great proclamation.
all right.
But one thing that when my first time in Sarajevo was in the summer of 1996 with then Commerce Secretary Mickey Cantor on the follow-on trip to the tragic Ron Brown crash. And it was on the request by President Bill Clinton for the purposes of doing exchanges between the city of Dayton and the city of Sarajevo to help through USAID, establish exchanges to build democratic institutions. And I returned in December of 96 as a guest by Jakob Finci at La Benevolencia. And we stayed in people's homes in Sarajevo. Now, I raised that because Jakob Finci is the one who then subsequently brought a case in the International Court indicating that as a person who is Jewish, he is not recognized under the construct, under the Constitution, the Dayton Peace Accords. So, as the senator was saying, this is not intended to be the hope was that this Constitution that brought peace, really it is a document that wasn't intended to be governance forever. That it would be one that would be transitional, and they could transition into democratic institutions and a democratic governing Bosnia and Herzegovina. But the problem is that I don't think that as an international community we can stand back and finger wag and say, okay, now why haven't you made that transition? I think the international community bears some responsibility for not having, we keep taking our eye off the ball and not providing that assistance to make that bridge. Both the EU, our European partners in the United States, we pay attention and then we walk away. We pay attention and we walk away, and I think that attention needs to be continuous, because as we saw most recently as we're going through this 30th anniversary, a conflict could arise again.
This brings me to directly to an essential debate here in Washington: how the United States chooses and calibrates its instruments of power. And I'm talking directly about the decision in October to remove sanctions against Milorad Dodik and its individuals connected to him, that has prompted some reactions in Bosnia and in the region. How do you interpret this move by the Trump administration, and what message sends in the country right now?
Well, I didn't agree with the Trump administration. We made that clear, but they went ahead anyway. Now, the good news is that the Western Balkans Democracy Act is going to allow for sanctions to be mandatory again. I remember having a meeting with Mr. Dodik in my office early, probably in about 2011 or 2012. It was during the Obama administration. And we were talking about the frustration with the rhetoric and the challenges of working within the structures of the government. And he turned to me and he said, well, at least we're not killing each other, which I thought was probably a reflection of where we had come. But it sort of feels like we're at the same place again. And I think the message that we want to send is the one that Congressman Turner just identified, and that is that we want to continue to be supportive of a unified country of Bosnia-Herzegovina. We want to continue that support. We want to continue paying attention. And we also want to continue to support the country's aspirations for EU integration, for NATO membership. I remember I actually went to the Balkans the first time with George Voinovich when he was senator, because he wanted to make sure there was somebody who was paying attention to that part of Europe. And I can remember one of the things we did when we got back was we had a conversation with Hillary Clinton, who was then Secretary of State, about Bosnia's NATO aspirations. And we said, we met with officials. There's a real commitment to do this. They fought alongside of us in Afghanistan and places. We need to support this because it will help the country. And as you pointed out, we supported it, and then we sort of forgot about it. And that has been a challenge. And I think removing the sanctions on Mr. Dodik sends that same kind of message. It's a mixed message for what is happening in the country and for what is important to support as we think about how the country moves forward.
Before I give you the word, Congressman, you said that according to the Western Balkans Democracy and Prosperity Act, the sanctions would be mandatory. What does it mean? If you can elaborate that.
It means that when sanctions are put in place, they will not, our president will not have the option to remove them, that they would be mandatory.
Interesting. Congressman, what's your...
Referring to the reference to Sakwatovich at on the trip where I was in Sarajevo, I was also in Syria and Kosovo, and as a result of Senator Wojtovich's leadership, Ohio's National Guard, is twin with Serbia as part of his legacy, because he wanted to make certain, with his Serbian heritage, that Ohio had a strong presence there, and it's a partnership which is paid off just wonderfully. It means a tremendous amount for Ohio, I know, to Serbia also. With respect to the sanctions, there's more to the story than just that the sanctions were released. And I think there is a story there of engagement that hopefully might translate into additional engagement. And that is that it's not just that sanctions were released, but there was engagement and there was action that was taken that the release of sanctions were in response to. Now, if that translates to continuous engagement that hopefully can result, and as I was describing, where the United States pays attention to Bosnia-Herzegovina and engages with our European partners to make that transition so that we can see Bosnia-Herzegovina get the attention that it needs in order for the parties to be able to make a transition to what I think is going to be the importance of governance, then that could be a very important beginning of a transition.
I think that rationale made some sense. To withdraw the secessionist legislation in the parliament, to stop some of the rhetoric. Unfortunately, the rhetoric started again, the separatist rhetoric, and it's escalating. And it's escalating in a way that is detrimental to the goal of removing the sanctions in the first place. And so I think when that happens, we have to respond in ways that show that we are paying attention, as you point out. And that's why I'm pleased about our legislation, which is going to go through as soon as we pass the NDAA this week, because I think it gives us an option then to go back and say, okay, you didn't keep up your end of the bargain, Mr. Dodik, And so we are going to take action again, I hope.
Thank you, Senator. And as I mentioned, the U.S. credibility in the Western Balkans is under scrutiny in the region now, with the mixed message that Senator Shaheen referenced. Also, delays in ambassadorial appointments in some of the countries. Also, perception of a more transactional U.S. foreign policy. How should Washington balance, again, the principle and pragmatism to maintain influence in the region?
Well, we have the same challenge that Bosnia-Herzegovina and other countries in the Balkans do, and that is we have our own politics here that influence what our messages are on foreign policy, and clearly this is an example of that. Congressman Turner and I probably would have had a different approach to the region than we're seeing from the administration in some ways. At least I would.
Would you?
I'll wait for the next person.
I don't have another question. I need an answer for this one. But I do have another question for you, Congressman. I know that you are keen and you have talked about the time to start a serious conversation about Dayton 2. What do you mean by that? How do you envision a Dayton 2? What role should the United States play?
Well, I think that goes to the issue of I just don't think you can do it alone. And I was, as I told you earlier, I was a mayor of Dayton, right? And I think, for those of us that choose specifically, Americans, we know, if you think of our own communities, we know that regional government, regional municipal government works better, right? When we think of Indianapolis, those communities that have been able to pull together regional municipal governments, none of those have ever been pulled off by people saying to the local regional communities, we're going to put you all in a room, and then when we're going to walk away and come back and see who comes out as the main leader. It's all been done by the state level or the business community going to the state. It's all been done by a larger intervening group or organization pulling the community together and the leadership of the community together. And that's where people haven't been killing each other. That's just where our own communities have been. Just even the United States municipal history, where we've been able to transition to more effective government. But yet here we have this unbelievable history, but we expect the same to occur in Bosnia-Herzegovina, where we just keep finger wagging and look at the community and saying, well, you all let us know how you're going to work it out. Well, if we can't do it here with just municipal governments, why would we expect a countries to be able to do it? We need to engage in the same manner that we engaged before, of expecting that we're going to be the partner to help you transition from what is, and as we all know, an ungovernable constitutional framework that was there to bring peace, but that they're not going to be able to just go into a room and say, well, now who's going to come out and be with the governing document. They're going to need us to sit with them, and the international community sit with them, for the populace and the leadership overall to be able to come out with a governing document.
Do you think that's going to happen, Senator?
I mean, let's bear in mind that America's democracy has taken us, well, we're about to have our 250th anniversary, so it didn't happen overnight. This has been 30 years ago. I think if we went back and looked at America 30 years from the end of the Revolutionary War and the establishment of the Constitution, we would have had a number of issues that would have been challenging, and we're in a very different environment today, where we have Russia meddling at every opportunity with misinformation. We have the challenges of cyber and the internet and social media that are pulling communities apart. So I think, as Congressman says, that our challenge is to think about how we can best support the Bosnia-Herzegovina and the other countries in the Western Balkans as they think about what they want for their futures. And to do that in ways that are not judgmental, but to try and provide assistance, to try and support aspirations for, as I said, EU integration, to try and address some of the negative impacts that are affecting countries in the region. And I mean, energy, for example, is a huge challenge in Bosnia-Herzegovina, and to be able to complete gas pipelines so that there are other energy sources for the country so that development can happen and opportunities can grow. I mean, that's part of the goal of our legislation, is to provide for more economic opportunities, because if people are comfortable in their jobs, secure with their families, they're going to be less likely to look for other opportunities, to listen to misinformation, to be interested in overthrowing the government. So thinking about ways in which we can provide support and investment, I think, is one of the things that we ought to be doing.
On that note, Senator Shaheen, besides being the architect of the Western Balkans Prosperity Act, you also have been a leading advocate for young people from the Western Balkans. What is the fundamental purpose of the Young Balkan Leaders Initiative, and what must be done to ensure that it will be implemented and it will make a change to young people's lives in the region that, to be honest, they're trying to find ways to leave the region?
Right. Well, again, that's why that's a provision in the legislation, to encourage the BOLD program, which supports young leaders for the future. You know, on one of my visits there, I remember having a round table with young people, and virtually everybody there said, I want to leave. I don't see a future in my country. And if that's the case, then there is not going to be a future in the country. You know, we need to encourage young people to stay and to try and support opportunities for them, and to help them think about how they can become leaders in their own country, how they can contribute to civil society, think about joining politics and running for office, and seeing that as a positive thing, not a negative. We've got to work on that in the United States as well. You know, this is not unique to the Western Balkans.
And from Congressman Turner, from a congressional perspective, what should the policy makers expect the Western Balkan Prosperity Act to deliver in support of the NDA's objectives?
Well, when you mentioned about the youth, I think that's why it's so important that we be a partner. People have to understand that we're going to be there, be that partner. I mean, the United States, Europe, we can't do it. It can't be that everything's going to come from the outside. The answer is not going to come from the outside. We're not going to give the answer or dictate. But at the same time, we can't just walk away and say it's going to come, that they have to do it themselves. All right. With this, we're in with the Balkans, and we're going to stay there, and we're going to be their partner. That's economically, that's through this transition, that's through the evolution of building democratic institutions. It has to be an understanding that we're in and we're going to stay. And that economic partnership, that building democratic institutions, means that we're not going to keep looking away. We're going to stay focused. And that's where it should be.
That is a very important message said by you, Congressman Turner, because the region is kind of facing some challenges and thinking that the U.S. is pulling back. But you are saying that's not happening.
I don't think so.
That's great news to hear. Last question, because I know you have to vote soon, is for Senator Shaheen. Are you visiting the region before retiring?
Well, I hope so. I'm planning, as I said, my first visit to the region was with Senator Voinovich, and I think we visited probably 6 countries in 7 days. So I expect to do at least that much before I leave the Senate, so I can have a chance to visit the whole region. But yes, I do want to go back, and hopefully we can go back with the Western Balkans Democracy Act not only passed but funded in a way that offers the kind of support that Congressman Turner's talking about.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Please, applause for Senator Shaheen and Congressman Turner. Thank you so much. Thank you. Nice to see you too. Thank you so much. And then now we're going to talk now to someone who was there when the Dayton Accords were being written and drafted, Ambassador Chris Hill. So this is our third panel on this topic. Fourth? The third or fourth panel on this topic.
I just, before we start though, I just want to say, what a pleasure to see Representative Turner, who was the mayor when we were there. We were all aware of that. And I just got to say, I mean, that town, Dayton, Ohio, just really turned out for us. I mean, people were really excited about this, about the fact that we're having this international peace negotiation in their town. And I remember after a particularly awful night, we had a lot of them, but I were coming back to to where we were supposed to sleep. And there are all these pictures on the walls, all these kids in the elementary schools, and their teachers had all asked them to draw a picture of what peace means to them. So these are all like 6 and 7-year-olds doing these little pictures of stick figures, mothers and fathers holding their children's hands with a sun, and it was usually sunny skies is what peace meant. So it was really for us being in the heartland where real people live and real people work. It was a great inspiration. So it was great to see Representative Turner here today.
Thank you, Ambassador Hill. If a 6-year-old in Bosnia is asked now to draw, we can hear you, to draw a peace picture, what do you think the color of the skies will be?
Well, they would be a lot flowery. I think there are a lot of problems right now in the Balkans. I don't need to add to that picture. I think it's pretty clear. The real question is, what are the countries going to do about it? When people in the Balkans say that's history, you're supposed to listen carefully because there's a lot of history. When Americans say that's history, they're saying it's irrelevant. Well, it's something in between, frankly speaking, and I think there needs to be a greater appreciation in our country here as to what the history has meant and how we deal with it. At the same time, I think perhaps in the Balkans, especially, there needs to be the notion that we've had a tough history, but we've got to figure out how to live together a little better than we're doing. And while I appreciate the idea that we should help them do that, I mean, ultimately, there is going to have to be a reconciliation process. And I think we've kind of put together the elements of what that would look like, but ultimately people are going to have to figure this out because you could choose a lot of things in life, but you usually can't choose your neighbors, and that's a big part of the problem.
I agree, Ambassador, but people do need institutions to do that, strong institutions and strong democracy. And that's where I think we have some issues. But 30 years on, what do you see as Dayton's greatest achievement, and what do you see as the most consequential shortcoming?
Well, I think I'll state the obvious. Dayton stopped a war. And anyone who thinks wars are sort of glorious means to a new end, I see what wars look like, especially in Bosnia. And it was just brutal stuff, and it was kind of senseless. And, people today talk about corruption. Have a look at corruption during a war. It's 10 times worse all the time. So I think getting people around the table, getting people to understand that this was it. In fact, we didn't even have a ceasefire until the day before we went to Dayton. And why didn't we have a ceasefire? Because we knew they'd fight on until they understood that this is going to be it. This is going to be what you're going to live with. And, it may be a great honor to be the first person to die in a war. It's never an honor to be the last person to die in a war. And I think everyone got the point, and the ceasefire held. So I think that was the achievement. In terms of governance, I must say, I never thought I'd be here in this setting with a microphone that I'm not sure is really working.
Easy.
But
We can.
I never thought I'd be here 30 years later talking about the accomplishments of Dayton, because I thought we would have had a lot of changes in Dayton by now. Now, I know there's a lot of talk about, how could someone have set up 3 communities? To understand that, the 3 communities, you have to go into Yugoslav history. That's the way it worked before. So that was a repeat. Should that have been done? Probably not. Probably not. There should have been a way of expressing the diversity of communities without being exclusive, but rather being inclusive. So that was probably a shortfall of Dayton. But I think ultimately the shortfall was that in the end, people did not understand the need. They're going to have to work together. And the process that really started in the Congress of Berlin in 1878 of going to the great powers and saying, hey, get my neighbor, he's been tough with me. That process of going to outsiders to ask us to solve problems, that's also continued. So where we go from here, I mean, I would love to see a much more active international role, especially in Bosnia. I'd love to see a much more active American role. But I think we have some challenges. And whereas in the 1990s, we saw that Dayton was the number one issue. I mean, there's nothing else in the world really at that time. I mean, there were things going on in China and other places. But it was number one. Today, we have a situation in Ukraine that is going to be a civilizational question. Are we going to win this fight and ultimately win the war or not? And that's going to be something everybody, I don't care if you're a Bosniak or Serb or Croat or American or French, everyone's got to be together on this one, but we've got to prevail.
Congressman Turner earlier advocated for Dayton 2 idea. What do you think of that, and how can that be implemented?
The concept behind Dayton was always that there was nothing in Dayton that was etched in stone. The concept was always, if you want to change it, change it. But you can't make war on the other guy in order to change it. It had to be by mutual consent. So the problem has been, of course, that the governing structures have kind of created a situation where not only was territory divided, we all talk about the territorial division, but also there were enterprises and economics divided, and what people call state capture today, it's really party capture. And that process of party capture has been a big part of the problem. So can a Dayton 2, or let me rather call it a Dayton 2, sounds like a movie sequel or something, but can a new sitting down around a table, can it address some of these issues of state capture? Can it address some of the institutional weakness that have been clear? And ultimately, when those are addressed, I think some of these ethnic issues can also be addressed. But so far, I don't get the sense of the will, really, to address some of these issues. We always hoped, and maybe this was naive, but, Americans have a bit of a reputation for that, although I would argue sometimes it's our best virtue that we understand you can't live with this. But we always hoped that you'd have a situation where a party, and let's say a party that's majority Croat, would line up with a party, I don't know, that's majority Bosniak or majority Serb, and they would start talking about issues. And they would say, hey, we need lower taxes if we're going to attract investments, things like that. We never got to the point where we had issues-based parties. Instead, we had this kind of ethnic capture of the economy, and that has got to stop.
I was hoping for a more positive ending.
Hey, I'm very positive. It's all very.
But Ambassador Chrysil, thank you so much for sharing your views with us. And you have started as a non-resident senior fellow, distinguished fellow at the Atlantic Council. So we'll have your expertise even more present.
I just want to say about the Atlantic Council, doing things like this, doing other things it's doing. I think the Atlantic Council is going to be looked to to do a lot in the world, and I'm proud to be a part of the process. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. I'm told there is a beautiful cocktail reception, so please don't miss it. And I'll talk to each of you soon. Thank you.